Hello and welcome to Eye on Africa. I'm Clarisse Fortuné. Our top story tonight. Voters in Cameroon are getting ready to head to the polls. President Paul Biya, at 92, is seeking an eighth term amid criticism over his long rule, the exclusion of key opposition figures, security concerns, and growing frustration among the youth. And parts of the country's English-speaking regions are under near total lockdown. Shops are shuttered, classrooms empty as separatist groups step up their calls for boycott. We'll take a look at what's at stake. Voters in Cameroon will cast their ballots in a presidential election watched closely across Africa. President Paul Biya, in power for more than 4 decades, is running for an unprecedented eighth term. Nearly 75% of Cameroonians have known no other leader than the current head of state. Clémence Valère has this report.
1962, Paul Biya makes his political debut under Cameroon's first president, Amadou Ahidjo. He quickly rose through the ranks and was appointed prime minister 13 years later. He remained in this position until 1982, when Ahidjo's surprise resignation propelled him to the presidency. Paul Biya quickly consolidated his power and removed many opponents after a failed coup attempt in 1984. As the only candidate, he was re-elected 4 years later. In 1992, he was challenged by his longtime opponent, John Frundi, in the first presidential election following Cameroon's return to a multi-party system. The official results showed Paul Biya winning with 39.98% of the vote against 35.97% for John Frundi. This episode sparked the first accusations of fraud against Biya that followed him in subsequent elections. Accusations that did not prevent him from running again and winning once more in 2011 and then in 2018 for a 7th term. Throughout his reign, Paul Biya never hesitated to remove all ambitious politicians from his entourage. His public appearances also became increasingly rare, raising many questions about his health. However, this has not prevented the man nicknamed the Sphinx from seeking an 8th term in office this year at the age of 92.
And to help us unpack the stakes, the challenges, and the possible scenarios, we're joined by political analyst Dr. P.P. Hughes. Thank you for being with us. So this election comes amid rising tensions. Opposition figures have been disqualified. Questions linger about Biya's health. Conflict persists in the Anglophone regions, and many doubt the credibility of the vote itself. So my first question for you, Dr. Hughes. Paul Biya's longevity has become a defining feature of Cameroonian politics. So how does that affect perceptions of legitimacy and voter motivation?
Thank you very much, Clarisse, for having me. On Sunday, October 12th, Cameroonians will head to the polls to elect their new president. For the past 43 years, Cameroonians have known just one president, in the person of President Paul Biya. Many youths in the country have lived to know just President Biya as their president, and this alone has an effect on the upcoming elections. We see a plethora of young people who are very agile, who are very active. They really want to see change because the only face they have seen throughout the political ecosystem in Cameroon has been President Paul Biya. So his longevity in office has a very, very important role to play as far as the upcoming elections is concerned.
So in total, there will be 12 contenders, including Paul Biya. So how would you describe the state of the opposition? Do you see any strong contenders?
The opposition, first of all, is very, very fragmented. Elecam validated 12 candidates, but as of today, I can say that we have basically 9 contenders because 2 of the oppositions have rallied behind one candidate in the person of Bello Maigari. Another strong opposition contender that has been making waves in the country is former minister Issa Chiroma Bakari, whom many are seen as a surprise because the elimination of Kamto, many felt that the election would be an easy ride for the incumbent. But with the waves that Issa Chiroma has been making across the country, there is a threat in this election on Sunday, October 12th.
And with other half the population under 30, the youth in Cameroon could be a game changer. Many young Cameroonians have expressed frustration or apathy towards politics. Let's get the pulse in the streets of Yaoundé.
I'm in support of a real change in Cameroon because for so long we have been, I don't know if to say we have been caged in some sort of political egoism that the president does not take into consideration the interest of the people.
Ma motivation pour choisir le candidat Paul Biya
Candidate Paul
est tout
Biya
simplement
is
parce
simply
que
because
je
I'm
suis née
24
aujourd'hui,
years
j'ai
old,
24
and
ans,
by the time
et
I was born,
je suis
he was
née,
already
il avait déjà fait
halfway
la
through
moitié
his
de son
mandate.
mandat, et je ne connais
He's
que
the
lui.
only president I've ever
Et
known.
le simple fait que je ne
And
sois
since
pas
I'm not sure
sûre
that if
que,
there is a change in
s'il y a
leadership,
passation
Cameroon
de
will remain
service,
peaceful,
que
I
le
prefer to
Cameroun
vote for
continue
him
dans
to
sa
avoid
paix,
unrest or
me donne
instability.
juste l'envie de le
It's better
voter
to stay
pour
with someone we
éviter
know.
de créer des tumultes et tout. Alors mieux vaut rester avec quelqu'un qu'on connaît.
So, Dr. Hughes, do you think that youth participation or abstention actually could be a game changer?
Of course, there is high level of voter apathy as far as Cameroon is concerned. A country of about 30 million inhabitants, the total number of registered voters for this 2025 presidential election stands at 8 million Cameroonians that have registered. And out of these 8 million registered voters, the youth are 2.6 million. So 2.6 million of the youth are a number that registered for this election. And if you follow keenly, in 2018, the President Paul Biya won the election by 2.6 million votes out of 5 million registered voters. So you see that the youth population has a very, very important role to play as far as this election is concerned. But you agree with me that most youth have felt reluctant to get involved in the system because they feel that with or without their vote, the system wouldn't change.
And some youth have been involved, as the election campaign draws to a close. Candidates are holding rallies to convince voters. But there are fears that the ruling party could rig the polls. A segment of Cameroonian youth have decided to not just watch the country's destiny being played out before their eyes. They, together with rappers, engineers, students, and hundreds of others, say, protect your vote through various platforms. They will closely be monitoring the votes on Sunday. Look at this report from our correspondents in Yaoundé, Indira Ayouk and Edwin Drissop.
On the streets of Yaoundé, volunteers of the Protect Your Vote movement have embarked on an awareness campaign. Their leader, Ex-Zafran, wants voters to monitor and keep track of the manual vote counting process at their different polling stations on election day.
Our movement aims to turn every registered voter into a local observer and a guard for electoral monitoring. We believe that voting is good, but monitoring our votes is even better.
More than 16,000 volunteers are registered on the movement's platform. Another initiative aimed at ensuring that the election results reflect the voters' choices is the website and app created by the Alternative Forces for Change. Designed by Eric Foyer, the app will allow Cameroonians contribute in uploading results from their different polling stations after the polls. This will speed up the process for the compilation of votes cast.
We have set up an extremely robust software system and digital platform that delivers results within 24 hours at most, or 48 hours at worst.
Cameroon's Minister of Territorial Administration has been quick to warn leaders of such initiatives.
Proclaiming truncated results through this platform that we have just discovered is a red line that must not be crossed.
More than 8 million Cameroonian voters are expected to go to the polls this October 12 to elect their president. 12 candidates are in the running, and one of them will lead the country for the next 7 years.
So, Mr. Hughes, what other mechanisms are in place to guarantee transparency? And where are, do you think, the main weaknesses or risk of fraud?
Well, you see, the Ministry of Territorial Administration is that ministry that is charged with responsibility to monitor these elections. And MINAT, through its minister, Mr. Paul Biya, has accredited some civil society organizations, individuals to act as election observers. 2 days ago, there was a training session organized by MINAT to ensure that all those selected to observe these elections get proper training. The overall objective is to ensure that these elections are free, fair, transparent, and credible. Out of MINAT, we equally have civil society organizations that have been accredited, individuals. We have our African Union, we have the European Union, and even the United Nations, who have also dispatched observers to ensure that these elections are free and fair. We have also organizations like that run by Michel Ndoki, who have put in place about 30,000 individuals to see how they can effectively monitor, the transparency, credibility, and fairness of these elections. So a lot has been put in place, both by the state and the non-state arm, to ensure that these elections are free, fair, and transparent. But you agree with me that even Elections Cameroon, ELECAM, which is the body charged with the responsibility to organize and monitor elections, has also engaged observers to see how they can collate on these votes and transmit them to the office that day.
And another key issue for this election is the tension in the Anglophone regions with the ongoing armed conflict in the northwest and southwest between the government and separatist groups. Some parts have been under a near total lockdown for weeks. Shops are shuttered, classrooms empty, as separatist groups step up their calls for a boycott. Luke Frago.
A city under lockdown. In Buea, the streets are deserted, businesses closed, and shop doors tightly padlocked. The ghost town order, imposed by Anglophone separatists, has paralysed the region for several weeks, a prolonged lockdown that coincides with the election period. Schools too stand empty, like this one, the Moliko Bilingual Grammar School with its abandoned classrooms, a symbol of an education system brought to a standstill since the start of the conflict.
Teachers come, the students are not there. For the few teachers who are able to come, those who live in the green zones where there is security.
At an ELECAM office, the body in charge of organising elections, a few voters check their names on the registers, but many fear going to the polls on Sunday, worried about possible violence. For this activist, civilians are caught in the middle between government forces and separatist groups.
Both parties are not being fair on the population, because if you look at what is happening, the government at this hand, the non-state actors at this other hand, it is the masses, the population that are suffering. Neither the government nor the non-state actors want to compromise.
As the country prepares to vote, tension remains high in the Anglophone regions, still scarred by nearly 10 years of conflict and more than 6,000 deaths.
And of course, Mr. Hughes, remember election in 2018 was marred with violence in that region. So do you think security remains a major concern in that region?
Of course, security remains a major concern as far as the northwest and southwest regions are involved in these elections. The state has put in place its mechanisms, but there is no guarantee that citizens that will go out to vote, their security is assured. I can leave my house and go and vote. What happens to me when I get back home? So the individual security of every individual is very paramount. Security is not yet a guarantee as far as the English-speaking regions are concerned towards these elections.
Thank you very much, Dr. P.P. Hughes, political analyst. Thank you very much for your input and insight on the elections. And that concludes today's edition of Eye on Africa. Thank you for joining us. And so we hope you do so again. Stay tuned to France 24.